Hello everyone, let me introduce myself. I am Facundo Carballo, and today I will explain you all about events on the smart contracts. First, we will create a smart contract, a very simple one, a counter, which will have two functions, one to increment the value and other to decrement the value. When someone calls to these functions, we'll emit an event, an increment event and a decrement event. After that, I will read these events data from our website, and then I will display it on the website too. Also, we will filter this data by some parameters that we will see on the video, and then we will read events data from other smart contracts like the USDT on the Ethereum Mainnet network, and we will filter again these events data. So it will display all the events, for example the transfer and the approval events that the USDT emits every time that a transaction is done or an approval is done. And also I will filter these events by the address account. I want to remember that you will have all the code of this project on my GitHub repo, like always, and also you can access to this Dapp to, for example, increment or decrement the value of the counter and try for yourself this Dapp. The links will be in the description of the video. Well, finally, I will let you with the video, but first I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel, because in this channel I will upload videos like this, talking about blockchain development concepts. I am sure that you are interested in that because you are seeing this video, and well, I let you with the video.
The events works to store data in the blockchain using as little gas as possible. The main difference between stored data using events and using variables from our smart contract is that the contract cannot access to the data that is stored with events. However, if the data is stored in the variables of the contract will can access to this data, and other contracts also will can access to this data only if the main contract allows that. This is why exists this difference in the gas consumed for functions that store data with events and other functions that store data in the contract variables. It's more cheaper store data with events because the contract cannot access to this data. It's just to show to the user. So it will be smart for us identify when we have to store data using variables of our contract and when we can just store the data with events. If we need data just to display to the user, and if we are sure that this information will never determine some functionality, we can store this data with an event and save a lot of gas to the user who calls this function. Inside of our smart contract, we can create a personalized event. This event will register all the data that we want. To do that, we will have to create a data structure that the contract will emit every time that an event is produced. So we will have to define a data structure who represents correctly all the data that we want to store every time that an event is emitted. There is no limit for the data that we want to store inside of an event, but there is a limit for the index data. This index data is very important because this will be the data from we can filter the events. For each event, we can set a maximum of 3 index data. So we will have to choose correctly the index data of our event. For example, in the ERC20 contract, exists an event called transfer. This event is emitted in every transaction of tokens. This event only has three parameters: the wallet of the sender, the wallet of the recipient, and the amount of tokens, where from and to are the index data of this event. So on the web, we can filter this event by the from wallet and also from the to wallet. In this smart contract, we can see that it's a simple counter which only has two functions, one to increment the value and other to decrement the value. Also exists two events in this contract. One event is emitted when the value was incremented, and the other event is emitted when the value was decremented. To emit a new event in the blockchain, you can just have to write this sentence, where we have to fulfill all the parameters that we set before. To read an event using Web3, first we have to create a similar structure to the structures that you can see in all of my videos. This is to read any data that is stored in some blockchain. In this video, I don't will explain that because I already make a video about that. If you need to know how to interact with a smart contract using Web3, you can check this video where I explain all of it in detail. To read events from a smart contract, first of all, we will need an instance of this smart contract. To do that, we need the API of the contract and also the address of the contract. To get the API of the contract, I usually use Remix. When I compile the contract here, it generates a file, where in this file will be the API of the contract. We copy this file and we paste it in our web project to work with them. The same happens with the USDT contract. We need his API. When we work with a contract that is already deployed in a blockchain, we have two options to get the API. If we know the code of the contract, we can just copy this and paste in Remix and compile it, just like we did before. Or we can go through Etherscan or their corresponding scan and search the contract, and if this contract is verified, you can copy his API. Like in this example, we will use two different contracts to read events, which also both are in different blockchains. Every time that we create an instance of the contract, we have to set the correct RPC node to create the correct instance of the smart contract. Like you can see, to the contract that we did before, first I set the RPC node of the Goerli Testnet network, while for the USDT contract, I have to set the RPC node of the Ethereum Mainnet network. With all the instances of the contract created, we can start to get data from these contracts. For this video, we will only focus on how we can get data from the events of these contracts. To get the events data, I called to these functions. I made one for each contract. Inside of this function, we have another calls to functions. And in these functions, we also have calls to other functions. So I will explain one by one, starting for the most simple one, which is the function that really gets the data from the smart contract. To the instance of the contract that we just create, we execute this function, and we pass it as the first parameter, the name of the event, and as a second parameter, an object who has the block number from that we want to get the data, and the block number to the block where we want to finish the search. To get the actual block number, I execute this function of Web3. I use this actual block as the to block in the object that we pass to the function. So I will get data until the last block of the blockchain. While for the from block, what I usually do is subtract a number of blocks to the actual block to get the final number of blocks to search for the events. Independently of the RPC node that you are using, you can get more or less events data. For example, with this free RPC node, I can just get 10,000 of events. The USDT contract has a lot of events per block. So with a range of a few blocks, we can reach out the max amount of events that our node allows to read. Because of that, when I call to the function that gets the events of the USDT contract, I pass as block from a very close one to the actual block. This is just for not reach out the max amount of events that I can read. If we write a console log to this data, we will see that returns an array of objects. These objects are all the events that we could read from the smart contract. Inside of each event are a lot of data, but we just need the values that we configure in the smart contract. We can find this data inside of this attribute. Here we can see all the data that our smart contract brings us. So to read this data, we just have to map the object that we got from the smart contract. For each event, we have to get the data that we want. I store this data as an object. And finally, I push this into an array that will contain all the events with the data that I want. If you check this function, I pass to it the parameters that the function needs to work properly. To get filter events, it's a similar process. We just have to make known to the first function that we want to filter the data by some parameter. The parameters to filter the events are only the index ones. We just can filter the events by those data. So we have to know the structure of the event that we are working on. After that, the process is the same. We have to map the data that we got from the smart contract. And then we make an array of objects where each one will contain the real data that we want from the events. If someone is asking himself, what is the sort events function doing after we got all the events? This function works to merge and sort all the events that we got from the smart contract. I did that just to show all the data together. To read the events from smart contract like USDT or some contract that are already in the blockchain, the process is the same. We just have to know who are those events that the contract provides. We can find this data if we have the source code of the contract, or we can go to Etherscan in the section of the contract. If the contract is verified, we will see the contract and we will know the events that handles. Like you can see, I keep the same function structure for both smart contracts. Are some difference, but it's only for the data that I am handle. For example, this function have a parameter called decimals. This parameter works to transform the amount in way that we got from the smart contract to the Ether format. In fact, all the events are read in the same way, no matter the contract with we are working. We only have to know which are the events that the contract provides us and how these events are structured. It's important that we use the same names to get the correct data. Otherwise, we can get undefined data. Also, it's very important to know what data are indexed, because with this, we can filter the data to get what we want.
And well, that is all about events on the smart contract. It's very simple. Always follow the same structure, so I think that don't have problems with that in the future. And if you have, you can always check this video again and remember the concepts. Well, I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you on the next one.